Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and today we're back with another which is the better investment value character for your account in 3.0 and beyond. Now in this video, I'll be super unbiased as we always do. We'll go through all the different categories, and if you care about my personal bias, my personal opinions, I'll leave it right at the end as we always do. So that's a promise with all of these better investment videos we always do on our channel. So let's first things first, start off with current value. When you are making your hard-earned pulls with this quad banner system going on in like 3.0 first half and 3.1, so octa banner in total, you want to know if you are spending your money, there's so many opportunity costs. You can be using your resources elsewhere, you can pull in a light cone. You want to know exactly what you're getting and are you getting the best bang for your buck. Now, the best way I like to talk about current value is because everyone's account is like totally different, right? We have different landscapes. So I always like to do things looking at a top-down approach firstly in Honkai Star Rail to see the lay of the land. Right now, there are broadly speaking 9 teams of Honkai Star Rail. This could change as well. I do see it changing in the near term. But right now, as of the current patch and leading up into the first half of 3.0, 9 teams mainly dominate. And these are the different categories. Notice how these two characters, they are similar in a sense that they play into similar states, although albeit a different way of executing. They do not play into current metas at all, which is your break teams, which is your follow-up attacking teams, which is your Akirion debuff nihility teams. Instead, they're very focused on new meta, which is summon fast and often, which is attacking very quickly, relying a lot on AoE attacks or teammates with buff energy and stuff like that, as well as of course hyper carry, which most DPSs can fill. These two characters in 3.0 are meta defining because they are pushing beyond the current stale game state that we have. I love it a lot as a content creator, as a gamer as well. It's very boring to just play like 3 meta teams mainly, and the rest of the characters don't get love. So we're starting to see a bit of change in 3.0, that's for sure. So whether you are a player who is lovely in Erudition, you like Erudition characters a lot, Herta is likely going to be more advantageous. If you are a summon enthusiast, likely Aglaea is going to be more focused, but that's like kind of duh, right? You don't really need me to tell you that. But that's just a quick lay of land. Now let's go on with the essence. What other things differentiate these two characters? To be honest, both of them are going to shape the way Honkai Star Rail is going to form. One, Herta in terms of her current value plays into a lot of Erudition characters. Think of her like the Akirion of Erudition. She wants to play with multiple Erudition characters to become even stronger. Currently in the game state, there are so many Erudition characters. So characters like Jade, characters like even Tiny Herta as well, 4-star Herta as well is considered, and there are so many other Erudition characters. You want to play her in a break team, she might even be viable together with Rapper. You want to play her with like Himiko, viable as well. If you're free to play, you can play her with Serval, you can play with other 4-star characters as well. For example, even like maybe Tingche if we can find the skill points. So between the two of them in terms of current value, if you are a late game player, a player who has been playing the game a long time already, Herta is likely going to offer you a lot more synergy with your current team compositions right now because she works well with the existing cast of characters. So she wins a plus in terms of that, in terms of current value. Aglaea, on the other hand, is creating new teams on her own because of course of her new summon mechanic, and we might even have new other mechanics in the game. Maybe it's a joint attack, maybe no more follow-up attacking and stuff like that. What this means is the only true characters that are super synergetic with her right now probably are like 2. Sunday and maybe Remembrance MC, which means that if you are a new player into the game, you are actually much more preferring to go together with Aglaea to play into a new style of gameplay because you probably don't have the roster depth of Erudition characters like Jade. You don't have the roster depth of other Erudition characters that maybe a long-term player might have. If you're joining in 3.0, I would say the shift actually shifts towards Aglaea a little bit because of how the meta shifts up. You do have a free Remembrance MC given to you as well, which is really very nice as well. So between both of them, if you are a later game player, Herta definitely does seem a lot more tempting. If you are a new player, Aglaea definitely looks a little bit more exciting in terms of current state of who they work well with in the current lay of the land. If you're talking about meta, what is being addressed, the problem with Aglaea really is her element in terms of current value. Again, if you're a new player, you don't really care too much about this because Lightning, probably you don't have it covered. But now let's move on to the second category, move the sheet a little bit. But what I want to talk about now is alternatives. And this is where you can actually really start to see the difference between both of them. alternatives really is the amount of other options you have available. And of course, if you're talking about summon DPS specifically, there are very few, maybe Jingyuan and stuff like that, who surprisingly, surprise, is also lightning element as well. That's one of the biggest downsides, in my opinion, of Aglaea, is her lightning coverage. If you are an experienced player, you probably already have lightning checked out, either with Akirion, either with maybe Kafka DOD teams, either with Jingyuan, you have Serval, you have so many different characters all that apply lightning. Unfortunately, Aglaea is introduced with lightning, so our first foray into this whole new remembrance thing, other than of course with our main MC, is the element of lightning, a very popular element which is very common by now. So in terms of alternatives for remembrance DPS, you only have Jingyuan. In terms of alternatives for lightning DPSs, then you start to see a lot more of them pop up. For example, like Akirion, for example, like Serval, Jingyuan, Kafka, so many different characters that apply lightning application, apply lightning break and stuff like that already. It's very, very common. A lot of you later game players, I think you're feeling the same way as well. And that is probably her biggest downside. It's just her elemental coverage. If she was like Ice or Quantum or something, I think she would be way better. But for a new player, you don't really care about that because you probably don't have all these characters, multiple one of these characters, to even start to feel bothered by whether you have lightning, too much lightning already. So now, going on to the flip side, how about Herta? Now, Herta is unlike other characters because usually DPS characters, when you come into the game, you power creep someone else, you make someone else weaker. But the truth is, Herta is being introduced in a time where Erudition is kind of mid. Erudition is not your best DPS classes. Right now, the best DPS arguably is like, in terms of the DPS classes, maybe it's like Firefly in terms of cost effectiveness, Nihility in terms of like Akirion, and even like Hunt for Fei Xiao, or not even like Fei Xiao alone, probably like Robin, right? And stuff like that. But at the time where she's introduced, she really doesn't really power creep too many characters. In fact, she brings in Erudition into the meta because she wants to play with multiple Erudition characters. She is a strong Erudition character on her own. This means characters, for example, like Jade even, will start to see a lot more synergy together with her and bringing her into the meta, bringing more Erudition characters like Double Herta that we see a lot in the live stream as well. All of these are really, really interesting teams, and she is actually an enabler of a lot of Erudition characters. I like that a lot, but at the same time, if you're talking about Ice coverage, there are many characters with Ice already in the game that we kind of forgot because Ice has been super out of meta for a long time. But just to name a few, you have Herta, 4-star Herta herself, who is maybe is an upgrade, maybe is a downgrade or side grade or whatever. Some of you in terms of design if you're talking about that. But we have a lot of elemental coverage of Ice. We have Misha, we have Jingliu, we have Herta 4-star, and maybe some other characters that I can't exactly recall 100%, maybe like Mark 7 with her AoE and stuff like that. Yanqing, who is probably somewhere around here somewhere. But Ice at this point of time is like probably not super meta. We don't have as much Ice as we have Electric, Lightning, and I think that's one of the few standout points for Herta. In terms of alternatives, in terms of Erudition, she's an enabler, so she doesn't really compete directly with a lot of them, since she can be played multiple. Usually Erudition, you want to play like different elements and stuff like that, but for Herta, she doesn't mind playing like same element Erudition because it pops off even more with the number of Erudition characters. Whereas Jingliu, Misha, these are not extremely strong in the meta characters right now. There are still multiple options, so it's not as if you only have like one or two. Honkai Star is almost out for many years right now, so you still have quite several options available for you. And in my opinion, between the two of them, I will have to give like the current value winner of alternatives probably to Herta. I think Herta has a lot fewer options. If you are giving Aglaea the win, it's likely because you are a relatively newer player or you are specifically looking at summon focused DPSs. In that case, I do understand that you can rank both equally well, but for the sake of I don't see a clear vision for summons yet, I will have to give it to Herta in this category, but you can argue both ways. I do agree that you can fight both ways. But of course, looking at current value is like nice, looking at current alternatives, but at the end of the day, we are playing this game for the long haul, and those of you who are like subscribed, watching us for a really long time now, shout out to you guys as well. At this point, future value, what do these characters bring? This is where it comes with the tricky part, because these two characters are pinnacle in shaping up the entirety of 3.x. You have new characters. All three characters, by the way, are super game breaking because they all play into new aspects. They are creating new teams on their own. But at the end of the day, in terms of future value, the one thing that you need to know is DPSs of a summon meta could be very, very essential. For example, a character like Firefly here, right? Introduced very early on, became super pinnacle in terms of her ability, her kit. Break became super relevant because she worked very well together with Remembrance MC. Similarly, Aglaea is having similar traits to Firefly as well right now, where she is a new class in her own category altogether, summons, and works very well with MC. So she might be the cost-effectiveness that, for example, Firefly is also similarly bringing to the table for like an entirety of the patch. But yet, then again, it also comes with risk, because whenever you are the newest DPSers into like that category, know that you will always be like power crap here and there. Later on, there will be a better DPS. But overall, I do think that like a character like Aglaea is seeing a lot of similarities to Firefly right now in terms of circumstance. Cheap to build, can play with a lot of characters already, is introduced into a new mechanic, so she might synergize with future characters as well. At the same time, summons, you know, is definitely going to be meta. Remembrance is definitely going to be meta. She plays into all of those. She ticks a lot of boxes for me, and I think it's very, very attractive to pick up this character. If she was standard, it'll be brilliant, it'll be really great, but at the same time, unfortunately, she's limited, so I think her value actually is very, very interesting from here. Flip side of things, I don't just want to focus on like one side of things and like praising her and Remembrance and stuff like that. Herta is also really strong. We all know that this is a tough decision because these two are very interesting and yet different characters altogether. We, at the back of our mind, most of us watching this video will be thinking of Akirion. Is Herta the next Akirion? Is Akirion going to be like power crap and whatever not, blah blah blah. But Akirion aside, because that's not the point of this video, Herta I definitely do think is one of the more stronger characters in the game once she's going to be introduced in the game. She creates an entirety new field, and I think that's how they're going to go with all the Emanators in future. Like the one key one will take up one path. So you have Akirion in Nihility, you have Herta in Erudition, and maybe you have a Destruction one, Remembrance one, and etc. etc. This is very nice because you have a rotation of metas, and in that sense, future value for Herta looks very bright. If you're talking about DPS power creep longevity, if Herta is being played into a niche team like multiple Erudition characters, similar to Akirion, the chances of you making them power crap is a lot lower compared to a character who is generalistic and fits into most characters and is a very, very broad character team composition. Right now, it feels that Aglaea does fit into still some comms. You can play with like Remembrance MC, you can play Sunday, you can play Ho Ho, any action advances like Hanya, Ting Yun and stuff like that. All seem to work, but she's of course going to have competition in future. Whereas I think Herta is going to have fewer people playing into the niche of a Erudition enabler. So between these two categories, depends on how optimistic you are on the future of Summon and how much you are a believer of her, Aglaea being similar to Firefly. Both of these two characters, future looks very bright. The one that shines brighter, in my opinion, for a longer period of time, likely is going to be Herta, because then again, a lot of other Remembrance DPS characters will come into the game. When that happens, likely Aglaea's position is going to be contested, but we do not see Akirion competing directly with Herta. They form their own directly niches, and future Emanators likely might follow suit in terms of trend. Speaking of trend, we of course not only need to talk about game state, right? Now we need to turn and look at our experience with Hoyoverse as a company. What have they been doing all the past 4 or 5 years that we've been playing their games, and some trends that we notice. One thing's for sure is between the two of them, Herta is the more popular one and Aglaea is less popular. The biggest thing I notice about Hoyoverse is whenever there's a character that's a little bit underrated, for example, think Lingsha, for example, think Topaz and Nambi, these kind of characters can tend to be very relevant later on. They always make us feel like, shish, I shouldn't have skipped that character. That character was more than meets the eye. They love doing this, and I feel that Aglaea is in that tiny situation right now where she's being contested with a giant, and naturally she's going to be set as a disadvantage. Of course, a lot of us know at the back of our mind that she is going to be pretty interesting because she's a Remembrance character. And for sure, of course, because she's a Remembrance character, Hoyoverse is going to make her relevant throughout the entirety of Amphorius. It will be leaving a very nasty taste if you like power creep a character who has no synergy with any character at all in the entirety of Amphorius and introduced in the start. I don't think that bodes well for them. Likely you will see a lot more support for a new path, a lot more supports coming in, buffing, whether it's synergy, double DPS kind of strategy. So she likely is going to be very pinnacle in future team compositions that we are creating. For example, similar like Firefly Break, which was relevant for a really, really long time. That's at least based on what Hoyoverse has liked to do. These are early innings, early stages of a new meta being formed, and these two characters likely take place in pinnacles of their own categories in Honkai Star Rail's Hoyoverse's plans as well, and how they plan to change. And we will likely see more of this as we go along and we get more snippets of interesting strategies. For example, like what does Tribi do, what does Mide do, and stuff like that. But we're already seeing a lot of this with Remembrance MC and how she already synergizes with Aglaea, as well as like Baby Sunday, which we'll talk about in team composition videos coming up shortly as well for all of them. Between the two of them, one is an Emanator who's really very strong, plays into the whole Emanator theme line. Simulated Universe is equals to Herta, basically that's the case. Both of these are very strong in terms of lore backing, in terms of money making logic that they have. We have Herta, who is like everyone has been waiting out for them. I likely think both of them will get equal amounts of support. If you are a firm believer that lore is a huge factor in Hoyoverse's grand scheme of things, Herta shines brighter. In the near term, however, I think Remembrance will have an adrenaline boost, you will have a shot in the arm. I think Aglaea looks a lot more interesting upside near term, but long term wise, I think 1 year later, 2 years later, when you're watching this video, somewhere akin, and you can of course revisit our old videos, we always have this comment 1 year ago when we made it. Probably Herta is going to be a bit more outperforming. Last but not least, of course, let's talk about free-to-play point of view before I share with you my own personal bias. Now, free-to-play point of view, the two of them, this is very tricky because free-to-play, you are either a new free-to-play or a older free-to-play. If you are older free-to-play, a character that is Herta is definitely a lot more attractive because you don't really need to invest in too much other teams. You probably have a lot of these characters lying around in pure fiction already that you're addressing. Herta, definitely a lot more interesting. Plays into a lot of characters that are probably on your bench, you bring them back in. Aglaea, on the other hand, is very new free-to-play friendly because a person who doesn't have too many Erudition characters, a person who only has Remembrance MC, Aglaea, and maybe the other characters that you pulled from the banner, like Hanya and stuff like that, work all really well together with Aglaea, and she likely is going to be much more free-to-play friendly in terms of team comp roster compared to Herta for newer players into the game. Between the both of them, one is older, one is newer in terms of free-to-play friendliness. At the end of the day, they are both DPSs in nature, and they both likely will pop off with signatures in their best team comps, which will involve many premium characters. For example, like Sunday, for example, maybe even like Jade for Herta. We will have, of course, more videos on team comps out shortly as well, once we do the analysis for you guys. But in my opinion, free-to-play point of view is split between how much age do you have in the game and how long you're maybe planning to play. But so I'll just leave this category as a tie. Last but not least, of course, my own personal bias for any of you who care about that. Personally, I think that this is a very difficult decision because one is a shot in the arm for Remembrance, one is an Emanator. My personal recommendation is always going the path of least resistance. I think that Herta likely going to be very interesting, and Aglaea, on the other hand, is going to be in a meta that is slowly evolving. If she's really very pinnacle, people that skip Aglaea will not even be able to play into the new meta that they are trying to think of, which means two things. One, her rerun might either come back very fast, or two, we might get more characters that synergize in her new meta, the summon meta that is going to come about. If you don't care too much about her design, you really like Herta a lot more, you're really limited to pools, I would say my pick is Herta to go the long way. However, if you have resources, these two are really solid picks. If I had to choose and fork out the resources, I'll be picking up both of them, which we will always do on the channel to create content for you guys. But that's just my personal thought. And let me know you guys' thoughts in the comments below as well. What's your final decision? If you found this video helpful, like, comment, subscribe, and check out these two other videos, which I think you might like as well. See you in the next video.